great judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from poor judgment. So I'd like to share a little bit of the route I took, and it might give you some idea about some of the things that you can do and we can do together. So anyway, I just showed, that's me, and my latest project is called Invest in Peace, which I'm doing with the Swedish Sustainable Economy Foundation. I'd like to talk a little bit about more of that later. But what I want to talk about now is the transition movement. And if you haven't heard about it, the transition movement came together when they suddenly realized that we were in a situation where the supply of oil was going to peak. And when oil peaks and can't keep up with demand, we're going to get a really horrible situation with the world economy. And as you know, the thing says that a rising tide floats all boats. But if that's true, it also means the boats closer to shore, that's like you and me, ordinary people, are going to be the ones that get stranded first. And so what the transition movement said was, in the beginning, was we must go out and spread this, message that we need to address the peaking of our energy supplies. And the thing was that they said, who's going to do this? Is the government going to do it? No. Is big business going to do it? Probably not. Are local authorities going to do it? Maybe not. And when you start to think about this, you start to come to the point to, well, who's going to do it? Well, that's me. I'm on my own. And it's you if you're interested in having that conversation. And in fact, that's the way all change starts, I think. Is like maybe one or two people get round the table and have a conversation and have a common issue. And that's the way we started. So I started in Sweden, and I started to show this film, and it's this one. Started to show the end of suburbia. And the end of suburbia is a film that just talks about all the horrible things that are going to happen when peak oil hits. And as you can see, it was the end of our suburban way of life. It's about oil depletion, and we're going to get a collapse of the American dream and probably a collapse of the capital dream as well. And I can tell you that our film shows were really successful. Really successful. We got people in, we showed the film, we said, come on guys, have a cup of tea, come back in, we're going to have a dialogue about this and see what we can do. Because we wanted to convince people that we had to do something about peak oil. They watched the film, they were convinced, they went and had their cup of tea, and then when we went to have the dialogue about what was going to happen, they weren't there. And yet we were successful. What happened? What happened when we started to go out with this message of peak oil? We must do something. And I think the whole transition, me personally, but the whole transition movement is like, where are the people? Why aren't we having this discussion? And that's what I want to talk about now. And the thing is, I started to understand something about people. We have two physiologies. I should know this, I'm a biologist. It's like when we're faced with danger, and that's why I'm going to bring in self-defense. We talked about it. I was like, when I'm faced with danger, my whole physiology changes. We know what this is. The hormones change, blood, our whole position, our whole stance starts to change, our focus narrows, even the way we think. The way we think is solve the immediate problem. Get out of here, fight, or flight, or sometimes freeze. Because that's what has kept us safe. And then we know the other one. The other one is like when we're not in danger. So when you're not in danger, it's like everything's fine. The physiology is completely different. Other hormones, blood pressure, completely different. Focus tends to go. Whole mode of problem solving tends to change. In the red mode, we're thinking just about ourselves and immediate family, and we're very logical. When we're in the blue mode, we're holistic, we're happy, we're generous. And so there are these two modes. And like, we know all this stuff, but what do we do about it? So the question is, talking about if we want this wonderful human project that we're all involved in, if we want it to be even better, what is it that's really going on? And I can tell you that, as far as I can see, there's this story that we've all bought somehow. And this story, I just have to ask, you have to ask yourself, I had to ask myself, is this story more in the red mode or is it more in the blue mode? Is this story one of the fact that we're living in a dangerous world, or is it one of the story that we're living in a culture of peace? So this is it. First thing is, there's not enough to go round. We're convinced of this. And if there's not enough to go round, then you're in the red mode, the answer is grab as much as you can while you can. And the more the better. The other mode is you're on your own, mate. You are on your own. And if you're convinced that you're on your own, then that means you have to compete with others. If there aren't enough lifeboats on the Titanic, then you have to push someone out of the way in order to get the lifeboat that you want. Or you could have the other one, which is not fight or flight, but freeze. You're excluded, get over it, accept it. Actually, it's the will of God, maybe someone might say. If you're poor, it's because it's your fault. God wants it that way. And the other one is that you're powerless. And this one about your being powerless is there's no point in trying. So what I realised, and a lot of the transition movement realises, there's this whole story going on. Now the problem is, if I stand up and say, hey, there's peak oil. We're on the edge of oil peaking. Then what I'm doing is I'm actually I'm reinforcing that story that there's not enough to go around. And if I'm standing here saying that we are in the hands of global trade deals, then I'm also reinforcing the story that we are powerless. And the average Joe will go away, like my brother, who knows he knows I'm standing here. He's getting on with stuff. He's grafting in his job down in Sussex, while I'm talking. Because there's no point in trying. You're powerless. But of course, I'm not the kind to give up. So we want to do something about this. Now, what I've discovered is, of course, is that you can start somewhere. And the first place to start is with you and a few other people. In fact, I call it 5 Ps. And the 5 Ps is really, if you like, my take on it. But it's the way that transition has evolved into the economy projects. And it's the way other local projects have evolved. The thing is, you start to discover that you need all of these things in order for the local economy to be in place and in order to change that story. I'm going to come back to this about how to change the story. But here's one of the things I'd like to offer. And of course, you can't see them because I maybe put the wrong colour on the words. But I know what they are. I'll start, first of all, one of the P's is people. And this is really weird. A lot of people try and start a movement and they forget the people. Because a movement without people doesn't work. It's got to be local. The other thing about local economy is the other P, which is the place. There's a lot of people haven't had, and I've done this. I tried to start a currency. I didn't have the people, I didn't have the place either. But at least I had the currency. People, place. The other thing you need is products. You need things to be able to exchange. It's not an accident that I'm here from Sweden talking about this stuff. Sweden is Brave New World. Sweden is the place where there is just a globalized market. There is no local economy left in Sweden. Sweden is decimated. Sweden is studied by Russia really deeply to try and understand how this ever happened. So you need local products. The other thing you need is the other thing you need, apart from local products, is a production, a way of making, I say that, projects. And finally, what you need is a payment system and a way of exchanging goods and services that works locally. So this is the 5 Ps of creating a local economy. I'd like to focus on the first few, and because Jose is going to talk about the other side of this, which is the economy. But let's talk about how to change in the first 3 ones. Very simply, let's start with people. We're separate from each other, and there's not enough to go around. And what we need to do is change this story, and even in the way we talk about oil, and we talk about soil, and talk about everything, we say, we're in this together, and there's plenty. That's the way we need to start. Look, we're in this together, there's plenty to go around, let's just make sure this works. The next thing is the place. And as Lawrence was saying, that we're separated from nature, and we're living in an unsafe world. We have to say, no, we're part of nature, and we can make this world safe. And finally, in terms of projects, we must compete, and we're powerless. There's no point in starting a project. We need to turn that round, say, look, we can cooperate and we can do stuff. Now, the thing is, this is my last minute, is just to talk about how to do that practically. Because I'm the guy who started with, there were 5 of us. There were 5 of us who started transition in Sweden. And there were 5 who started transition in England. 5 people around a table. There were 5 of us who started the Eco-village. We met in a dirty basement once every week and said, we want to make it an Eco-village, how are we going to do it? Today we have an Eco-village with 3 houses, 18 members. We've been on television. It's been hard work, but it's there. So, people. Look, the first thing to change the story, I'll start at the bottom here, the first thing to say is with food. If you want to say there's enough food, invite people to food. Have a party. And before you do that, say hello to your neighbours. So we're trying this incredible thing in Sweden. We're actually talking to each other. You know, like in the lift and in the... Helena knows this. If you come to Sweden, if you get in the lift, you all have to find a corner, stay far away from each other as possible, and have no interaction whatsoever. So that's one of the things you can do, is just start talking to people. Bring and swap. Bring and swap says, hey, there's plenty around, you know, let's just have a big table, put everything we don't need, and just swap it, or have a flea market or something. Another thing, which friends of mine are doing in Mallorca, show films with meaning. Invite people, say, let's have a meaningful conversation. This isn't entertainment and violence, this is a film with meaning. Music and entertainment is amazing, you know, and to me, still, an open stage night is the most entertainment you can get. It's better than watching television. It's real people, maybe making real fools of themselves, but hey, it's fun, you know. The other thing about people is, and about locally, is always to celebrate successes. Always to do that. Find something to celebrate, and then circle meetings. With place, we've tried wild food. The best way to get to know a place is to eat it. Really. Taste it. Taste the weeds. Make food of the weeds. Make it together. We've tried walking routes as well. You know, walk around the place, talk about the history, natural history, go cycling together. We do old tool days. Create a city of peace, have peace days. And then finally, with projects, you can have networking meetings, calling people together. Transition does that. They bring caregivers together and say, how can we localize care? especially around food, corporate, no, community-supported agriculture, things like that. And of course, we can have study circles. There's a study circle I know called Food Matters, which is locally. There's plenty of stuff you can do, but you can't do it alone. So you need to find at least 4 other people, and you need to find a place. And when you've had the people and the place, you need to have that dialogue. Okay, so that was what I wanted to say. Oh, I've got 1 minute left, but hey, you know, we're always... Okay, thanks for listening.